And so the first thing that you will notice is the great deception. And so in the last days, one of the assets a believer must have is discernment. If all you have is money in an account and cars that you drive, you are very poor. Because one of the things that will invade the earth realm in the last days are great deceptions. And these deceptions don't just float in the wind. The Bible said there will be captains that will herald this deception. For he said, many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. So many people will be deceived. And so if you are walking on the face of the earth in the last day, what you should try to do is not to fall into the quadrant of the many that will be deceived. That means only few will have the rich asset of discernment in the last day. There will be many who possess cars and lands, but there will be few that have discernment. And so it said, many will be deceived. Now, one of the things you need to focus on as you grow as a Christian is how to master the life that is on your inside. Mastery of the life within is the power of the ages to come. If you don't know how to interact with that life, master its operation, and on the strength of the discernment you build from that life, begin to order your step, you are a victim waiting to happen. And so Jesus told us the first sign of the last day is the great deception. Number two, he said, and there you shall hear of wars and rumors of war. It says, see that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet come. And so the second sign you will notice in the last day is anxiety and trouble. Fear of the unknown. And the reason people will be troubled and anxious is because they lack spiritual understanding. The war is not the sign. It is the trouble and the trauma that the sons of men will start walking in that will show you. Now, when the medical guys went out, they mentioned it, but you will just know that one of the greatest things you will meet is high blood pressure. People are just afraid. They are afraid. Terror is everywhere. The terror can manifest in form of war, but the fear is the sign that we're in the last day. That means people no longer have spiritual understanding. When people begin to tap into spiritual understanding, nothing can move them. They become like Mount Zion. Like the psalmist said, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. And so when you find a generation where people start living in fear and terror, which is born out of their lack of spiritual knowledge, you know that you are at the end times. Today, people brag with secular knowledge. I have a master's degree in anatomy. I have a doctorate degree in cyber technology. And then you ask him, what do you know about the spirit life? He doesn't even know the voice of God. But when he stands to speak, he brings and chants out heaps and heaps of paper that he calls certificates. And he wants to do business when spirits are involved. Now, there's nothing wrong in schooling. At least some of you who are here, you know we've schooled. We've schooled, but we understand Keda in spiritual realities. That secular knowledge is nothing compared to spiritual knowledge. Secular knowledge can put food on your table when there is no crisis. But spiritual knowledge can take you even beyond time. When time is accomplished, you will still stand. And so Jesus was revealing to us that in the last days, men will not have spiritual understanding. And because they will not have spiritual understanding, every physical crisis that happens will set them off. And they will begin to live in fear and in anxiety. And then he went to the third part and he read for us the third sign. He said, for nations shall rise against nations, kingdom against kingdoms, and there shall be famine and pestilence and earthquakes and in diverse places. And he said, this is the beginning of sorrows. What a prophecy. This is the beginning of sorrows. Now, the reason I'm teaching this is to help us understand spiritual arsenals that will give us an advantage in the crisis that is to come. Because if you don't know these things, you will build your confidence on the mundane. But these things Jesus is listing they will sweep off every investment you have in the natural. Imagine if you were in Ukraine and you invested. Now, let me give a balance before I say what I want to say. Invest in real estate if you have money. Invest in gold if you have money. Anything that is not affected by inflation or deflation, invest in it. There's no kind of inflation that will affect land. Inflation does not affect gold. And also, take advantage of innovations. New things that are happening. Understand it. Don't cross your hand and say, well, I don't know what is going on. You will be left behind. You will become obsolete. Somebody came to me the other day and was talking to me about cryptocurrency, to invest in it. I told him, I am open to invest in it. But there are two things. Number one, there's a lot of fraud in crypto. And the way crypto works is, meet those who are influential, get them to invest, and get them to publicize it, so that the gullible people will rush into it. When they now rush into it and the coin appreciates, the whales will cash out. I say, I'm a man of God, my conscience can't bear it. So I cannot get people to invest in something, and then when the money grows, me, I now cash out and leave my followers that God allowed influence to get them follow me to become victims. That will make me a wolf in sheep clothing. And so I said, before we talk about investment and publicity, what are the structures around it? Because before I invest, I need to know who is the developer. And if I know the developer, we must have a structure where the whales cannot pull out. If the whales can't pull out, then we know that this coin will last. That time, we can now begin to talk investment. Because when I finish from earth, I will appear in heaven. And God will ask me, what did you do with the influence I gave you? I will now say I used it to increase my cryptocurrency value. You will go to her. Now, why did I say that? I'm not against it. I invest in it, but I will never front it and I will not preach it until I meet a developer who has a structure where whales can pull out. That time, I know anybody who is investing will gain. So that we who are the first who enter will not pull out, and our disciples that we lured in will now suffer. That's fraud. Are we together? So, invest in innovations. And as I talk to you here, I will tell you one area that is very effective in the last days called cyber security. And you will know, in the days to come, if you don't invest in cyber security, if you don't invest in agriculture, you'll be in trouble. Because you will see some of the things Jesus listed, even famine is involved. These are the things that help you know how to live your life, so that you will be strategically positioned in the last days. And so the point I'm making is, number one, there will be what? There will be great deception. So you need discernment. Number two, there will be what? Wars and rumors of war. So you need to have spiritual understanding so that fear will not kill you. Because many will be in trouble and many will be fearful. And the reason they will live like that is because they are reading the news in the natural, not the news in the spirit. If all you hear is CNN and BBC, you will die of fear. But in addition to CNN and BBC, you need to hear breaking news from heaven. Because it's the breaking news from heaven that will keep you at peace, even in the midst of trouble. And so when you find the people who don't have access to spiritual knowledge, they will become victims, because most of the decisions they will take will be born out of anxiety. And many times when you take decisions out of anxiety, you'll be wrong, because the necessary intelligence required to fortify that decision will not be there. Anxiety makes you unstable. Number three, Jesus said there will be famine. And that means food will be attacked. And because food will be attacked, you need to become very intelligent around investments. That's why I spoke about investment. You need to know what to do. In fact, we need to begin to trust God as we fast and pray. That people should no longer just pray for 10 hours. While they are praying for 10 hours, they need innovative minds. We live in Africa where food is surplus. The whole world is looking into Africa, because Africa now is like raw material and we can't process nothing. When the famine comes, where are the technocrats? When famine was to come in Egypt, Joseph rose up and began to give them strategy of processing and preservation. And so this is a time where somebody needs to know what to do to Gary, that you can store Gary for 7 years. And you know what to do to Gary to increase its content. So when you take 5 spoons of Gary, it can satisfy you. Because food will become a weapon. The locusts will come and eat the food. And the point will come when they will tell you, before you eat, you will take a mark. You may be able to stand and say, I will die of hunger. But when you have a son like I do, and you don't know what to do, you won't be able to see that boy die. And so in order for you not to come into a tight place where you are forced to make a decision that you won't naturally consent to, you need to develop strategies. And so people must become master investors, and we must also develop intelligence around processing. This is not the time to waste. You come to certain families, bread is open there, beans is open there, water is running. That's an anti-spirit. It's against the age. This is not a time to waste. This is a time to preserve, and also to go beyond preserving to processing. People must begin to think on how to convert things and make them more effective. That's the age that we are in. But if you don't know this, you know, many nations of the world are coming to Africa. They are buying seedlings from us. They are developing technology on how to hybridize it and give it more value so that it can last with them. And so they can use it, because a time will come when, if the attack comes, you will not have food to eat. And instead of the Africans to think intelligently on how to interact with food, all we are interested in is immediate gratification. Somebody will load 20 trucks of yam from Zakibian straight to Port Harcourt and sell all. And he has been farming yam for 20 years. He knows nothing about yam. All he does is to farm it and sell it, and collects more money and put in the pocket, and God has blessed him. Because we don't know we are in the last days. Our approach to life is wrong. And so when Jesus was teaching, he was equipping us against the times that we are in. Number 4, Jesus said that there will be betrayers. He said, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. So the 4th sign Jesus gave was betrayers. And so when your friend betray you, don't be offended. Build discernment to get trusted people. It will happen, and it will keep happening. You will kill yourself being offended. Can you imagine this sister that I've been with for 10 years? Well, you were with her for 10 years, but you didn't add discernment. That's why we create structures now. Even in church, there are structures. Don't come and wake up and say, that person on the media knows what he's doing. You will be shocked. The next time he will kneel down crying, he has sold your black magic camera because there's no food in the house. And you have a crusade that night. The agenda of God will be destroyed because you were naive and gullible. There should be accountability. There should be structure around everything you do. Don't wake up and say, this man is a prophet, living with the offering. One day he'll be walking and his socks will shift. And then the only dollars that was given as offering will fall. You will now notice how careless you have been with God's resources. Thank God we trust ourselves, but we will add structure to what we are doing. Even me, that is the set man, I'm not the one who makes withdrawals from the ministry funds. It's somebody else that makes withdrawals. I authorize, somebody else makes withdrawals. So one day I will not get tired and say, this thing is not working. And the next time you will see me talking, I'll be talking from London and say, you know, God has instructed me to relocate to London. Relocate to London with your seed. We are in the last days. Fathers will betray children. Children will betray fathers. Spouses will betray themselves. And so if you want to work effectively, build structure into every relationship, including family relationship. Consciously know how to relate with your wife so as to manage her emotion, because there will be many whispering spirits that can creep into systems that are not structured and create doubt in the hearts of men. And those doubts will lead to betrayal. You are a pastor, you say, no, here we are on fire, we are holy men. And 5 sisters come to your office, your secretary is a sister, she's working with you around 1 a.m. And then your wife traveled Somebody who is now angry with you because you promised him something you didn't give him will now call you and say, well, I don't know how they work here, but I saw Sister A coming out of your husband's office around 1 a.m. 1 a.m. She will now call somebody else. Where is this sister? They'll say it's with God's servant. You won't know where your divorce will originate from. But it originated from lack of wisdom and lack of structure. And so when Jesus is telling us these things, is to help us think deeply. You went and threw your child in a school and said this is a Christian school. And there's no strategy around monitoring how they are treated. Somebody came to pick his child from school. He knows this boy is a tyrant at home. You know this kind of children that they are pulling things every second. As he's holding one, you collect it, he's carrying another one. But every time he goes to carry this boy from school, the boy is sleeping. So what are they telling this boy that makes him so calm? Is this not the same boy that wakes up with action at home till night? How come when he goes to school, he is so calm? Only to discover later that they add some sedatives to their food. So because the nannies can't handle them, they just add some things. So when they eat, they sleep. And so they are compromising your child's mental faculty from infancy. And you are walking. You say, Kai, oh, thank God for this school. If you don't have discernment, if you don't have structure, you will be a victim of betrayers. And the idea of the betrayer is to wreck what God has committed to your hands. When structures are put in place, it negates betrayal. That's why when Jesus was ascending, he didn't give us men, he gave us offices. To some, he gave apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, so that when Paul go, another apostle will rise. Because if he gave us Paul and Peter, Christianity would have ended. But because he gave offices, if one steps out, another steps in. Even God needed structure. And finally, he said, many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many. And he said, because iniquity shall abound, he said, the love of many shall wax cold. And so in the last days, people will become godless. And the reason is simple. Iniquity shall what? Abound. That's why everywhere you turn now, you see a naked person. They are trying to access your soul structure. They are trying to pierce into your soul and to darken your soul. So when iniquity dominates you, whether you like it or not, you will become an agent of the devil even before you know. There are many Christians today that are either masturbating, or they are into pornography, or they are into drunkenness. They didn't know how their soul was remodified like that. They are not conscious of the last day. They didn't know that music is not about entertainment. Music is actually a gateway to the soul. And so what they do is to look for those who have access to the realm of sound and compromise them so that they can create vibrations that can alter the soul structure in a negative direction. And so you hear music, suddenly you become a drunk. You hear music, you become gay. You didn't know that the music was a product of sequences of vibrations formed with intelligence to alter your soul structure. Everything is created to make you become a slave of iniquity. And so a point comes, the things you want to do, you can't do, and you can no longer serve God. Now, all of these were the factors Jesus pointed out to predominate the last day and to make those who we end with God few. And so one of the burdens of a church that is alive is to equip people to survive the tyranny, the deception, and the treachery of the last day, which ranges from what? Deception into what? Famine, into what? Wars and terror, into what? Betrayals and deception, into iniquity. If you don't build a structure that survives these 5 things, your eternity has already been compromised. And so we are going to be doing teachings to fortify the believer to be able to survive these things: deception, terror, betrayers, famine, and iniquity. This is why we come to church. Church is the citadel of defense. It's a spiritual defense tower that God set in motion to create safety and security for his children, so they walk into the fullness of their ordination and heritage in God as touching the last day. This is not a place just to come and celebrate. Yes, we celebrate, but over and above it, we come here to be fortified. So as we go into the world, we have an advantage that makes us become like Mount Zion that cannot be moved. And so tonight, I want to touch two of those advantages that we have as believers who will make strategic progress in the last days.